All right, everybody, welcome to the first session of Designing for PoE Lighting and Automation, where top design professionals and subject matter experts with experience in designing and constructing Power over Ethernet intelligent buildings will share their best practices and lessons learned. This first session will quantify the value proposition for yourself, either as an owner or for your customers. Through this and future sessions, you will gain crucial skills and knowledge essential to delivering better intelligent buildings for developers and owners. So, if you haven't already done so, please click on the link that I'll throw into the chat line here in a second to register for the following sessions. I'm going to throw this up here. Oop, it's up there. The next session will be hosted by Donnie Walker, who's with us today with Newcomb and Boyd, and he will cover the first and most important step you need to take in a PoE-based lighting and automation project. You will learn how to define the intelligent building scope in terms of IoT endpoints, network infrastructure, network security approaches, building infrastructure systems, and data integration. It's a really important session. Basically, it's what is achievable with intelligent buildings today, and how do you go about making it a reality? So, this series has 6 online sessions hosted each week for the next month and a half. So make sure to register for them all to get the best advice on PoE lighting and automation. Having participated in the development of the course and knowing the kinds of rates these world-class professionals deserve, I would estimate you're probably getting somewhere in the range of $5,000 to $10,000 worth of consulting expertise, all for the price of 1-hour training for the next 6 weeks. So that's a pretty sweet deal if you ask me. So register to make sure you have a place in the next sessions. The seating is limited. So without further ado, I will come in later and I'll add that link in just a second. Let's go ahead and introduce the 6 panelists and hosts of this training program. So first, let me introduce you to, and I'll bring this up. First, let me introduce you to Louis Tsao. He's presently VP CTO at Sinclair Digital LLC, as well as an independent building consultant in his own technical consulting practice, Louis Tsao Consulting LLC. A 26-year veteran of Cisco, over the last 9 years, Louis worked as a technical leader in Cisco's IoT business unit and was a key member of the team that developed Cisco's digital ceiling and digital building solutions. After the completion and opening of the highly innovative Marriott Sinclair Hotel, Louis left Cisco in order to pursue his passion of expanding the scope of digital building systems with an ultimate goal of developing a building as a DC microgrid. Next, Joseph Herbst. Joe has worked in several rapidly evolving markets over his career. His accomplishments include the creation of the world's first power management laptop chipsets, design of semiconductors that were the engine in Cisco's switches, the growth of digital video technology from CRTs to flat screen TVs, and recently the development of a PoE lighting control platform. Joe has founded 4 startups with 3 successful exits. Joe holds 16 patents as a BSEE from the University of Delaware, MSEE from Purdue University, and an MBA from Santa Clara University. Welcome, Joe. Let me introduce Hannah Walker. She is the Vice President of Sinclair Digital LLC, a low-voltage design consulting company developing digital buildings. Mrs. Walker graduated from the University of Texas at A&M with an architectural degree in 2017, and then joined Sinclair Holdings to help design and implement smart building technologies at the Sinclair Hotel, which was completed in January of 2020 as the most diverse PoE-powered building in the world. During employment, she retained a CCNA certification and has been using both her networking and architectural degrees to design and develop smart building spaces and infrastructure. Now, Larry Jones. Larry is an associate and senior electrical engineer with Baird Hampton and Brown. He has over 40 years of engineering experience in electrical power distribution system design, lighting design, and communication systems design for a wide variety of commercial, industrial, and institutional clients. He is the electrical engineer of record and the lighting designer of record for the Sinclair, a recently completed project that converted a 1930s era Art Deco office building into a 21st century state-of-the-art Marriott Autograph Collection hotel. These guys have some serious credentials. Let's also welcome Donald Walker. Donnie has over 20 years of engineering, project management, and partner-in-charge responsibilities in communications, security, and integration building automation systems. His experience includes aviation facilities, healthcare, judicial facilities, advanced technology developments, military installations, data centers, mixed-use developments, performing arts centers, and college campuses. In 2017, Donnie was awarded Progressive Consulting Engineer of the Year by Control IT Trends for demonstrated industry leadership in advancing the smart building. He was named partner in 2016. We also have Andy Rittenhouse. Andy is currently a specifications manager with Somfy Systems, a world-leading supplier of motorization and control solutions. Andy's focus is on commercial business solutions relating to window coverings and natural daylight management. Andy achieved his WELL AP in January of 2020. All right, now, finally, and definitely the least of this bunch, you have me, your host, Tyler Andrews. I'm an influencer for intelligent building and Power over Ethernet. I currently lead PoE Texas, making technology accessible to facility owners with my unique mix of technical expertise, construction experience, and project management knowledge. I also host the most popular YouTube and Facebook channel and live stream about Power over Ethernet and intelligent buildings, Converge PoE. I speak and train regularly about my project management experience and the importance of Power over Ethernet in the new intelligent building. Most especially, let me come back and thank all of you for making the time to join us today for this first session of Designing for PoE Lighting and Automation. Today, we have an open panel discussion where we're discussing the value proposition of implementing a PoE lighting and automation system. We've asked all of the panelists that you're going to see across the top here, see, you guys are all here for me, to prepare some thoughts basically on why consider PoE lighting and automation, which after all is a relatively new technology. I'll ask all of you as the audience out there watching today to submit any questions you have to the Q&A section. There should be a Q&A button down on your screen. It lets you control your Zoom. Throw your questions in there. At the end of the panel discussion, you'll get to hear your answers. You'll get to hear answers to your questions from the top pros. Now, if you have a specific question for any one of the panelists that you see here, feel free to put their name in the question so we can refer the question to them. So with that, let's dive right in so you can hear the real story from the real experts. And so I'm going to start with a little video clip. If you've been tracking in the PoE, if you've been tracking the PoE scene at all in the past 2 years, you've heard about the Sinclair Marriott. I'm going to throw on a quick clip so that you can see a little bit about it in case you haven't heard it all.
Futuristic. This central system controls pretty much everything in the building.
Every light bulb, every outlet, all the door keys, all that technology is connected. From the moment I walk into my room, I'm working some kind of touchscreen.
Even the bathroom is overwhelming.
So, you know, while I'm shaving, maybe I want to know, well, I don't know, what's happening in the world? Huh, might rain later. Good to know. You might think that the shower would be the one place you'd escape technology. Nope. Touchscreen, personalized with, you know, my preferences for temperature and steam and lighting. Here's the craziest part. There are sensors throughout every room that can detect not only that I'm here, but how many other people are here with me.
Now, the great news is that we have three, as you heard in the introductions, we have three of the key players for that project with us today. Hannah, the Vice President of Development, who acted as the owner's representative, Larry, the lighting designer on the project, and Louis, the technology consultant who saw the project from conception to completion. So I'd like to start with their perspective on PoE lighting and automation. So I'm going to highlight our guest panelist, Louis. Louis, you were there back at the beginning of the project. Why did the Sinclair Marriott choose to make such a PoE-intensive hotel?
So thank you, Tyler. That's an excellent question. It turns out, Farouk Aslam is the owner of the Marriott Sinclair, and he develops and owns hotels, owns and operates them. And his previous project was a Spring Hill Suites, Marriott Spring Hill Suites brand hotel. And he had put in LED lighting in the facility and had put in a Lutron lighting control panel. I think it was like a 45 or 47 zone lighting control panel. The issue was once the facility opened, the lighting controls were not working as planned. And there was finger pointing between Lutron and the MEP. To solve the problem, they would have to basically rip apart the hard sheetrock ceiling to understand the wiring of the system. And nobody was willing to do that, and certainly not interrupt the operation of the hotel. And so he vowed that for his next project, which was going to be the Sinclair Hotel, that he would find a different technology. And so he actually played around with low voltage transformers as a way of powering LED lighting, because he understood that the LEDs themselves were DC powered. And he does have a technology background. One day he kind of looked at his phone on his desk, which is an IP phone, and he started Googling PoE lighting to see if it actually existed. And interestingly, he found a video from Cisco that I had been part of the TechWise TV series. And we talked about the digital ceiling, which was the PoE lighting, and lighting really was the first application. And he kind of reached out. It took him a while because our videos from Cisco don't have email addresses or contact information. So he spent about a week trying to track me down, eventually did. We kind of met at a hotel technology conference. And then from there, we adopted a strategy of basically was a crawl, walk, run. Crawl being, let's put technology, the PoE lighting system in a conference room. Let's understand it. Let's figure out how it best fits in his office building, because he did do his office building first before doing the Sinclair Hotel. And in his office building, he basically deployed lighting only and quickly realized that there was much value to be had by removing electrical circuits that powered a number of different other devices within the property onto PoE the same way that the lights were being powered. And so that's why when we did the Sinclair, and there were a number of items that were specifically engineered at his request with different vendors, like the mini bar, the window blinds and shades, the TV that's powered inside the bathroom vanity mirror. And all of that, it was an effort to reduce the number of electrical circuits, hence the number of circuits on the panels, and reduce the cost of the electrical installation, which was one of the achievements, in addition to the magic of all these things within the room being automated and talking to each other.
Now, just so you guys know out there, if you ever get the chance, you should totally try and get to visit Hannah's office. There is a conference room, Louis, right? And in that conference room is probably the quintessential evolution of PoE lighting and automation from like the origins to completion. It is this beautiful conference room full of technology. I have sworn if you ever leave that conference room, Anna, you have to let us know. We're going to come and make a museum of that conference room. Thank you, Louis. That was great. Well, now, Larry, you were the lighting designer, and from a lighting designer's perspective on the project, What value have you seen from implementing PoE lighting system?
Thanks, Tyler. Excuse me. There are really a couple of things that I want to mention, but I want to tag on to what Lewis was saying. In that process, once we began Sinclair, Farouk wanted to go with DC lighting, which was, you know, totally off the radar for everybody. And so, and that was a result of his experience with his Spring Hill Suites. So one of the first things we did is we said, you know, we need to go sit down with the city and make them aware of what it is we want to do, because, you know, we are pushing the envelope here. So we invited the building official, the electrical inspector, and the fire marshal to come meet with us. And the building official couldn't meet, but the fire marshal and the electrical inspector did. We talked about DC lighting. Farouk very eloquently explained why, you know, he did not want to waste the energy to have something that converts from AC to DC in every light fixture when the, as Liz mentioned, the LEDs are DC powered. So the city understood, and they were on board with us. And long story short, basically they said, we're okay with this idea as long as you comply with all the applicable building code requirements for emergency lighting and egress lighting. As long as you meet all the energy code requirements for wattage, which that was not a problem with LED light fixtures, and the control requirements. And really the main thing was the electrical inspector said, what I'm going to look for is that you don't exceed the allowable current carrying capacity of those small gauge wires in the low voltage wiring, because the electrical code does regulate that. So we said, okay, we're good with that. So how is that of value to the PoE lighting? In my mind, that's an intangible value because we brought the city in as a partner at the very outset of the design process. They understood what we wanted to do, and it really paid dividends later when we had some other issues come up that they already knew what we wanted to do. For example, the digital shower valve that was in the video. We had some issues with how the manufacturer intended that to be wired, and in our opinion, it was not code compliant. So we sat down with the city and said, we don't think this is right. Are we wrong? And they said, nope, we agree. And we said, okay, how do we fix it? We want to use this valve. How do we fix it? And so they worked with us and came up with a solution. That happened several times on this project because of the relationship that we established with the city at the very outset when we sat down and talked about DC lighting. So that was an intangible value. I think the most important tangible value, I can sum it up in one word: controls. With the PoE lighting system, the controls are inherent. They come with the system because it's all software based. You don't have to have a separate lighting control system like you do with line voltage systems. So there's a cost savings there, but that's not the big reason that I say controls is in my mind as a lighting designer, the main value that PoE lighting brings to the building. It's the simplicity of the lighting controls. You know, anybody who's involved in the design and construction business understands every time there's a new code update, the requirements are more stringent, there's more complexity. And, you know, Joe's nodding his head. He's going to address this a little bit later in his part of this. But what happens, what we've experienced is that as the lighting control systems have become more complex, there's a lot more opportunities for something to go wrong. Whether it's quality control from the manufacturer, whether it's design issues, you know, whether it's the installation instructions are not clear, or the installer doesn't understand them, or the installer just makes a mistake installing it, you know, it's not commissioned properly, whatever. I mean, we have a whole smorgasbord of issues, but the bottom line is, as consultants, we have had a lot of problems with conventional lighting control systems. Sometimes it takes multiple visits from the manufacturer's rep, or sometimes the factory, to get them commissioned and working properly. I heard a lighting designer mention this a while back. They said that they were really pleased with this complex lighting control system that they had put into a meeting room, an auditorium, like a university lecture hall. And they said, there's so many things this system can do. It's really great. I love it. But he said, but you know what? When I went in and pushed the button to turn on the lights, they didn't turn on. And he said, I love the system, but if it doesn't work when the user pushes the button to turn on the lights, it's a failure.
Mhm.
In our experience, the PoE lighting control system is, far beyond that. It is so simple. It's, it's programmed. It's done by the manufacturer. It works. It doesn't require, a lot of extra effort to make it work. It's simple. It works. It's intuitive, and it's something that the user can modify easily if they need to. And I don't want to go on about that, but I'm sure Joe will talk about that. We will talk about that in some later sessions as well. But to me, the real value is the simplicity of the controls of the PoE lighting system. That gives the owner, it saves them some money, but it gives them a lot of flexibility, and it works. And that's what's important to us as a lighting designer, that our clients are happy with the lighting control system.
That is very cool. Thank you, Larry. And that's a very interesting perspective. We don't always get to hear, but very important for owners to make sure they're happy. Well, you know what? Let's ask Hannah Walker now. I'm going to spotlight you, Hannah. What were some of the values that came up during and after construction that, Lewis and Larry might not have had perspective on that became valuable toward the end of the project and after the project commissioned?
You're on mute.
Hannah, we can't quite hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Much better. Yes.
Okay. So first, I would like to say that describing our conference room as beautiful may be a bit of a stretch. It looks like a tornado has hit the room, a PoE tornado. But as far as the hotel, we do see a lot of value that's been added post installation. I would say for the guest experience, the value add is just the customization the guest gets to put in there. You saw a little bit in the video, the guests can select different scenes, for whatever mood they're feeling. And then one thing the guests really love is just the simplicity of, like, when I'm in the shower, I can take a shower in blue, purple, things like that just make the guest experience so great. They love it, and we have amazing feedback from that. Another thing about another value that we see is with the efficiency of the system. So when you're doing energy calculations and you see that PoE is very efficient because, like you mentioned before, we're bypassing the AC to DC conversion. But we found that with the automation and with the scene selection and things like that, where you can dim the lights a lot easier, we're using much less electricity than we initially thought. And we already knew it was going to be efficient, but it ended up being even more efficient. From the advanced metering, we can actually see that as well. So the great thing is that it's very easily controlled, and it can meter itself, which allows you as an owner to see the cost benefit in action. And then I think the third thing that we found extreme value in is when we put the system in, through construction a year ago now, to when the system has been in and working, all of our partners that we work with, since it's all a network and it's all in software, we can now have access to features that were not available at the time of installation. So even though we put it in a year ago, since it's all software based, we can now see advanced options and new features that have come out with the technology. And that's been something that we've really enjoyed seeing is, sensors that we put in, now they have more features that we can access, which they weren't available before.
That's awesome. Like, when you think about it, you're right. The future proofing of your facility is really essential. Okay, very cool. Well, I'm going to jump over to Andy. Somfy participated in Sinclair as well, and if I've heard the rumors right, Somfy actually got into PoE in part because of the Sinclair. But most importantly, you have a lot of experience with comfort and the personal interaction with spaces. Now, Somfy, and I know you, Andy, particular are a real proponent for PoE automation. Why?
Well, I believe in healthy and sustainable building designs that are going to benefit both the people working inside the buildings and the environment in which we live. There are several green building rating systems and standards that are being used to create sustainable and healthy buildings, such as LEED and WELL, and I'm very passionate. And while the criteria varies from program to program, integrated automated shades and lighting can offer impressive synergies in achieving these standards and project certifications. One advantage of PoE is that multiple types of data can react in real time, allowing the different subsystems to work together efficiently compared to siloed or standalone systems that can compete or work against each other, creating the inefficiencies. PoE enables integrated strategies such as the use of robust natural light, it's free energy, when applicable, and reducing the energy use of artificial lighting and optimizing the circadian lighting system within the offices. Tyler, we see manual shading as our biggest competitor to proper natural light management. Manual shading is sometimes used on projects because of the assumed extra cost of powering automated shades, but it's without consideration of the negative impacts on circadian lighting systems. We have to realize the cost, the real cost of energy used when the circadian lighting system has to compete with manual shades left in one position or inefficiently positioned during the day. PoE can offer a convenient, low infrastructure cost solution or alternative to automated shades compared to some of the traditional power sources we see in the market today.
Yeah, if I heard right, Andy, the biggest competitor to Somfy in the automated shades industry are manual shades, just the manual versions. And I can't even imagine the amount of energy lost now because people open blinds, leave blinds open, or close blinds and never open them again. And adding the automation, you're winning back all that efficiency.
Correct. You're essentially optimizing the circadian lighting system that's going to be in place. Otherwise, if shades are left down all day, there's a lot of inefficiencies there.
Yeah, and you're never going to get that back.
Correct.
So on efficiencies then, I'm going to jump over to our host, our panelist, Joe, who is a seasoned lighting professional and has seen lighting controls from the implementation and the design sides of the business all the way to facilities in operation. I introduced Joe as the entrepreneur building these PoE lighting and automation systems. So Joe, what value do you see most for your customers who come to you?
So I tend to lump PoE and specifically PoE lighting into those three primary virtues: simplicity, scalability, and flexibility. If I had to kind of wrap that all into one thing, I would say the fact that Ethernet is an open standard breaks the legacy paradigm of what we've done with buildings, which if you think about it, AC is 100-year-old technology. It's kind of like the move from analog to digital. So PoE represents kind of that transformation of bringing power and data and information across open standards, which opens up supply chains, innovation, the same way that PCs connect to each other from different manufacturers, different servers. PoE brings that to buildings. So if you take a look at the old way of AC wiring, what you physically touch, like a wall switch, connects to a light through a physical wire. With PoE, all of that becomes virtual. So we're creating virtual circuits. If you look at any building, you've got different energy codes, but it all kind of distills down to you've got stimulus or a bunch of agents that are acting on lights. So it's an aux sensor or a vacancy sensor or a daylight sensor or a wall switch or a schedule event. Once you actually start bringing that myriad of IoT devices together, you really have to have some form of software and compute integration to make that simple and easy to use for someone to literally just walk in, hit a button, and the light to work. And so that is really what PoE brings, is all of these rich features like circadian rhythms, the ability to, with a wall switch, connect it to a shade or connect it to a light switch or connect it to water temperature. That
rich platform really is what PoE is bringing to the value.
That's fantastic. And you know, one of the things that I see happening in the background that is harder to quantify is the optimization of wiring. Because when you're doing wiring in that traditional AC sense, you have to run the 14 gauge or the 16 gauge wire to the light switch that you want to talk to, and then from the light switch to the light that you want to talk to with it. And all that wiring comes at a premium. But when you can virtualize those connections, I'm excited to see the amount of optimization you could do with the physical infrastructure.
Yeah, removing conduit will just be a tremendous savings and space.
Yeah. Oh yeah, a huge savings.
If I can jump in, Tyler, to this discussion. There's other benefits that come with this, and I call it the 3 S's. It's scalability, it's safety, because now you're going from a high voltage application that has shock and the ability to arc to one that's low voltage. And then the other one is sustainability. It's the elimination of conduit and the reduction of bulk metal in the whole job. And all those things translate to costs, right? So you're eliminating costs from the solution.
That's a great point. Well, I'm going to turn now. Thank you, Louis. I'm going to ask Donnie his opinion. He's a partner at Newcomb and Boyd who regularly designs and implements PoE lighting and automation systems for some of the largest institutions in the world. So Donnie, you see universities, government offices, and enterprises choosing Power over Ethernet for their new construction projects. Why?
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. So for the most part, we haven't seen our clients specifically ask for PoE lighting. We have had a couple just because they do a lot of building projects that have specifically said, we want to try out PoE lighting. We've heard a lot about it and see how this works for their projects. But for the most part, it comes as an outcome of our technology discussions and really helping us to deliver smart building outcomes. And so, yeah, we've heard a lot about the scalability of the platform, and that's really how we've used the PoE lighting systems as a way of delivering technology in a platform that gives us both open access to data, and so it's a data stream that delivers the capability of sensors like people counting sensors, indoor air quality sensors, and as well as more of the traditional lighting controls, the flexibility of switching and those types of things that have been discussed. And then that future flexibility to grow with the project as well as to grow for the life cycle of the building, to be able to add new technology as technology is available, and really just becoming that technology delivering platform as much as it is the ability to power the lighting over the low voltage.
That's great feedback, Donnie. And you know, that's a crucial point. Hannah made it well in when she talked about value, but this is a really important point. I like the term Joe uses. It's a very good term. He calls it a walled garden. PoE and having your lighting and automation on an IP network takes you out of the walled garden. Even in the realm of being able to do automation and controls, there is automation and control systems and have been for many years, but the problem is the cost and the complexity of integrating them with an IP-based system like PoE. Those barriers are either gone or much lower than they were, 5-10 years ago.
That's right. I think the systems utilizing open APIs is really the future of technology and integration, and PoE lighting enables the integration through those open APIs to bring in a whole host of technologies.
That's fantastic. Well, guys, I'm just gonna open it to the group. You guys have all brought up some really important and I think very insightful perspective on the value proposition. Anybody got a value? Does anyone want to share a value that we haven't discussed so far?
Tyler, I'd just like to say that one of the things we've not talked about is the fact that, and you'll hear this in the later sessions, once you establish that PoE lighting network, as you were just discussing, that really is the backbone of the intelligent buildings that we're looking for, that, that we're going to see in the future, that we're designing for now. And, it's not in addition to, it becomes the backbone, the foundation. And that's something that we as this group have all discussed and agree upon. And so that's really important. Once you do the PoE lighting, then you have the platform in place, as Lewis was mentioning, and you were mentioning too, to go ahead and expand and add all these other systems on. And, like I said, it is the backbone. And so it's important to realize you're getting more than a PoE lighting system when you start with a PoE.
Yeah,
Maybe
Larry,
could ask this.
if I could add on to that, we were calling that the base building network, because it does become the backbone. And while most projects today are kind of limited to lighting, Farouk took it further because he understood the economics of what he was saving, and his goal is to put as much as he can on the network. That's why at the Sinclair you have motorized curtains, blinds, the mini bar, some door locks, obviously physical security cameras. By the way, for data, there's a GPON system, so it's fiber optic, and the ONT terminals in the rooms are powered by PoE as well. Access points, there's a number of different devices that are powered by PoE. And trust me, if Farouk could have converted others, like the big television, to PoE, and that's something that he has in the works, he would have done it. And for him, he got it early on. It's a cost benefit. It's kind of like why the big groceries or the big box stores thrive, because it's economics of scale. And that's something that is achievable with PoE.
That's an interesting perspective, and I think that's a good way to look at it. It's the economics of scale. Even it doesn't have to be the super big projects. You get that economics of scale on the big, massive infrastructure projects and also on smaller projects. Like
that's correct. And it also
did
starts
his office spaces.
You also start to think about, if you start looking around devices in a building and you really look under the cover, they're pretty much all DC on the inside, which begs the question is, why are you building an AC infrastructure in a building to power DC devices? That means every device has to do its own internal power transformation. And so I think that the Sinclair motivated us all to start thinking more broadly about the role of DC power in buildings. And now when you think about future buildings and sustainable technologies, where you have a power generation, where you have solar panels or other technologies that are being developed, that's all DC power as well. And so, again, why convert it to AC and then back to DC? You got a double conversion. You could avoid all those energy losses of the conversion, which results in heat into a more efficient system. And there's a number of folks that are starting to look at these concepts.
That's great. And when you mentioned that energy, Lewis, it sparked my memory too. This isn't, I'm thinking about it from the practical today application purposes. These aren't just like things that we think will come in the future. States like California have started doing what's called Title 24. And if I understand that right, it requires you to do lighting automation and controls for energy efficiency purposes. And so, when you say economies of scale, it's, well, am I pricing myself out of being able to do projects? Well, PoE gives you an alternative, if I'm hearing it right. You can comply with Title 24 without having to invest in super big, expensive systems.
That's correct. And you can now, for example, it started with Title 24 and then became more broader with ASHRAE 90.1 in commercial office buildings. There's a requirement for in offices that you must power off 50% of outlets with occupancy. And so now you have the same sensor from the lighting system being able to turn off the relay that powers the outlet. And it's, again, it's you're leveraging one sensor instead of having to have alternate sensors. Because the way you did it before is that the electrical system had a sensor and the lighting system had a sensor. Why have two sensors? That's just cost.
Mhm.
If I could add
Go ahead, Joe.
some of the other elements. So PoE brings information, and I think we have yet to see how that information will be able to achieve efficiencies and grab and catch opportunities. But I have seen, back to California Title 24, things like in hotels and apartments where now we're connecting door contact closures or window contact closures with the HVAC system. So not tied to lighting, but if someone opens up the door, they shouldn't have the HVAC on, right? So whether that's a hotel or a multi-resident tenant building, these are the type of things that are now getting connected in the world of PoE that never could be connected before.
And that's really important. So, and that's great feedback, Joe. And I'll kind of pre-preface this for our panelists. You know, a lot of the questions that are coming in right now have to do with the cost-benefit analysis. How do you analyze and how do you choose the cost-benefit analysis? So while you guys think on that, I'm also going to change the conversation because I think this is an important element. We've definitely covered why to choose PoE. And if you guys at the webinar haven't noticed yet, everybody here is a proponent of PoE lighting and automation. However, it's important to present both sides of the coin, or at least both sides of the argument or perspective. So I'd like to ask the panelist group, when should you not do PoE lighting and automation? And I know, Hannah, you and I've discussed this before. Why would this group here, the audience, choose not to do PoE?
So I think that there is a rumor going around that you can do a standard lighting, you can do it cheaper for PoE. Well, that's not necessarily the case. I don't think that you should choose PoE lighting if you have no interest in controls, dimming, automation, because the benefit of PoE is that you can do that control and automation simpler and maybe for a cheaper cost compared to a traditional controls and automation system. But if you just want simple on-off, lights come on, they turn off, then PoE is not going to be cost effective for you. It may get there, but it's not there today. And so if that's what you want, if your goal is the cheapest solution, I don't think that PoE is for you.
That's a good point. I mean, it's hard to compete when you're taking, you know, a switch that is capable of doing so much data transfer and can move information around and connect and manage traffic, and you're trying to stack that device up with a on-off circuit breaker.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting basically asking for the value of a super intelligent system at the cost of basically a couple of springs and contacts. And I see your point, Hannah, there. It just doesn't, you won't be able to make that math add up unless you're starting to do things like you would point out, add things to the network. If you're talking about doing some lighting, like Joe talked about, door contacts, window contacts. But I think this is an important conversation too for the group out there. What we're seeing with projects is people come in and they start with PoE lighting and automation, and they would say, okay, I want this to win with the lighting and automation, but oh, by the way, I want it to be able to have touchscreen controls. And I want it to be able to, I want the system to be able to do this and this, but they're still stacking up the PoE lighting system with so much more capacity and so much power with the cost of some on and off light switches, as if that's an apples to apples comparison. And I think that will be a challenge for people proposing and working on PoE lighting. It's important to really quantify the automation and the capacity of the system. Donnie, when would you say don't do PoE for your customers? You had said you choose to offer PoE because it's the best solution. But when do you say, you know what, PoE is not the right solution for you?
Yeah, so agreeing with Hannah that when you're looking at a simple project that's not looking at detailed lighting controls, and there were several folks that came to us and just were looking at costs and saying, is PoE a cheaper way for us to deliver lighting? And they had no plans for lighting control. And so we've done several studies and been able to really prove out that cost of where that cost justification comes in. And it's when you're comparing that against a fully functioning networked lighting system. And then you've got the additional cost of hardwiring zones and the complexity of on-site electricians working through those details. That's when it's a clear no-brainer. But if you're really looking at a simple space, not interested in the energy paybacks and the complex controls capability, then traditional lighting is going to be cheaper. Now, one of the things that is interesting is let's say you are interested in doing the lighting controls, but you're in a tenant fit up, and so you've already got your 277 volt lighting available that's been provided for the lighting circuits. That's been one complexity that we've looked at and said, okay, well, if we go now to a distributed architecture and use that 277 volt power that was provided for the lights to power the PoE switches, now we're making use of the power that was provided for the space, but still able to go PoE. So whereas before some people would say, well, if there's already power there for lighting, then we can't do PoE, it won't be justified. But if you have to reconfigure all the lighting and you're putting new controls in anyway, it can still be cost justified.
Okay, great. So if I'm hearing both between you and Hannah, people are asking, what's the cost benefit analysis, or how do you do the trade-offs between traditional and PoE lighting? And I don't think we're going to, and perhaps one of you can actually give some cost factor information, but I think the rule of thumb that the participants should walk away from is, if you're looking for a cheaper alternative to a traditional on and off lighting system, PoE is not going to achieve that for you. If you're looking for automation, controls, energy requirements, then PoE becomes a cost-effective solution.
Hey, Tyler, this is Louis. If I could jump in on this conversation. My history with PoE lighting goes back. I was part of that original group that developed it at Cisco going back to 2011. And I've seen deployments all over the place. And so let me address two things. One is cost, and the other one is, when should you not do PoE? I've seen costs go everywhere from it being 15 to 20% more than line voltage to the maximum in savings. I've seen 40% less. So it's all over the map, and it really depends on how you're involved with it. Because if you want like Cadillac fixtures and top of the line stuff, well, the fixtures themselves have a high cost. And now you're talking about replacing drivers, and depending on the partner, whether it's centralized or distributed, there's so many factors that go into this. The general rule for me is, if you design for PoE in the building before construction, you're going to save money. The longer you wait in the process of designing the building to consider PoE as an alternative, the less likelihood that it's going to be cost effective. I've seen jobs that were completely designed AC, they tried to flip them to PoE. In some cases, some of the electrical bids had already been gone out and bid. And so people aren't going to give you money back. Then it becomes a cost add-on. And so if you design for PoE from the get-go, that's where the maximum savings are achieved. The other topic here of when you should or shouldn't do PoE, my general rule of thumb is, if it's a large organization that has a formal IT shop, that IT shop needs to be working hand in hand with facilities, because with the people that do and design the building are the facilities guys, and they can't shove a solution down the throat of the IT guys. That becomes a political battle. Same thing where if the IP guys, the IT shop thinks that they can do it better than the facility, again, you end up with this political struggle. And so there needs to be alignment, and it's typically the progressive companies where both facilities and IT are starting to work hand in hand. They realize that actually, ever since cyber crimes became an issue and exposed, these connected HVAC systems that nobody had ever vetted, and now they're having to kind of work hard hand in hand to ensure that there's proper security. And we can address security concerns, and it's part of the workshop. I know I'm kind of, jumping ahead, but these are the kinds of things that need to go into consideration when you're looking at PoE. You can definitely it's not apples to apples. You can take a traditional lighting system and the PoE lighting system. You can try to combine them to see which one is in terms of functionality and cost, but it's really difficult to compare apples to apples because they're different. The PoE system just has more functionality. The controls are inherent. The traditional AC, well, the controls are separate. You have to bring in controls over it. It's a really difficult question to answer.
It is, and I will also throw out there something that I've heard several of you talk about before. But real quick, I want to just acknowledge, guys, we are into the Q&A session. I am bringing up some of the questions like Scott McClintock and for asking these questions about the cost difference between traditional and PoE lighting. And I'm bringing up the Q&A session right now. So go ahead and get your questions in, y'all, because now is the time we're going to cover them. The one big problem that I've seen some of you discuss and we've heard in the background with other projects is when you're trying to do an apples to apples comparison, what ends up happening is it's where you're putting money into the bins. Because, for example, if you're taking PoE lighting, PoE switches, they're no longer in the IT budget that often does not appear into the building cost budgets, and moving them into the building cost budgets, all of a sudden you're looking at a much higher cost. But the reality is you're moving things from one budget bin to another. Challenge that the audience will face as you're trying to do that apples to apples. Keep in mind that it's not that you're actually moving money or potentially putting money in different bins, and that's going to create problems for you.
One thing, Tyler, I would say, you were talking about, the money distribution, and I think that that's really hard to quantify with PoE because we found in our project, we weren't just saving money on the electrical side. With the sophisticated automation of the lighting, and we could connect with the HVAC, we ended up finding savings on the mechanical side as well. So because of some of the sophistication that we could do with connection with the lighting and the controller with the occupancy sensors, we were able to take some of the functionality out of a typical BMS system, which saved the owner a ton of money on which BMS system he ended up choosing. And so that wasn't just an electrical cost we were saving, that was a mechanical cost. And then also we're combining our wall controllers in a project that I'm doing, lighting, shades, and HVAC. And so then we eliminated all the thermostats. So when you're trying to price out what is this PoE system going to cost me, you have to look at all the reach of it, which can be difficult when you're thinking of, okay, how does this relate with my mechanical system now? And in a lot of different other ways too. So I think I just wanted to add that bit in about the far reaching and moving the money buckets around a bit.
And while I've got you, Hannah, spotlighted here, we do have another question where people have been asking, and any of the other panelists can weigh in, energy cost savings. Do you have any factors or any rules of thumb that you can share about how much energy savings you should expect migrating to a PoE system?
It depends on what you're migrating from. At Sinclair, obviously, we had a lot of really old fixtures. Some were even neon, some were fluorescent. So just going to LED is going to save you money, but then you save a 14% energy conversion loss at the fixture from powering it with DC. And then from there, since the light fixture isn't creating heat, you're saving more money on the mechanical side from not having to cool the space. So it's hard to do a direct comparison, and it depends on what you're comparing it to. Are you comparing it from just LED lights that are AC powered? Are you comparing it to fluorescent lights? But I can tell that at Sinclair, with the energy savings from what we had before, and then we also did a very energy efficient air conditioning system called the VRF system. We saved even more energy. So it's really it's a combination of all your digital building parts and how are you powering things. And it is hard to, say an exact efficiency until all the parts that you're going to do.
Actually, if I can jump into this question, maybe I can get help from Larry in answering it. If I recall, the original design for the Sinclair had a 4,000 amp service, and it was brought down to about 3,000 amp. Is that correct? And Larry, could you kind of, I heard it was a 25% savings, but maybe you can quantify it.
I don't remember the exact numbers, Lewis. I want to say we had a 3,000 amp service, maybe, is what I recall when it was all said and done. But at that point in time, the electrical code required a certain watts per square foot for different occupancies for lighting loads when you designed the service. And we had complied with that, but there was a provision that if you were able to meter the lighting load and monitor it, if you had a permanent provision for that, that you could then use the energy code maximum, which was considerably less than the electrical code minimum. And so we were able to take that exemption on Sinclair, and we ended up reducing the service size down to right at 2,000 amps, just under 2,000. And Farouk wanted to go with 2,000, but as our advice to him as his engineer was, let's not do that. We are too close. There are always going to be some loads as the building is constructed, that things that get added, things are not the load that we planned for. So we had to twist his arm a little bit, but we persuaded him to go with a 2,500 amp service. But so there was a significant reduction in the service size. Now, with that said, it's important for our attendees to recognize that the new electrical code that just came out, the 2020 code, has reduced that number significantly. And so, it's going to be more difficult to gain much on service size by going with the PoE lighting. But the fact is, the PoE lighting has the metering function built into the controls. So we didn't have to buy metering to verify the lighting load either. It was just, again, it was gravy, if you will, as part of the PoE control system. And so it's still, if you're going to do a lead building or you have to comply with ASHRAE 90.1, you have the metering on the lighting already built in with the PoE.
So guys, we're getting lots of great questions, and I'm going to apologize to the audience today. We are not going to finish all of the questions during the session. If you're comfortable, I'll assign some of these remaining questions to the panelists so that they can respond to you directly by email. We'll also add some of the answers to the YouTube version of this video. So once we're done with this, we're going to, and I'll move the screen back to me here for a second, we're going to go ahead and publish this to YouTube and Facebook, so you'll be able to come back, review it, double check the answers and the questions you were curious about today. So I'm going to apologize in advance. We're not getting to all the questions, and we are at the top of the hour. You have been very generous of your time, but you can also expect, if you're joining future sessions, a lot of these questions are going to be answered in the future sessions as well over the next 6 weeks. So don't hesitate to join those as well. The link is in the chats if you want to see it. It's also part of all the email traffic. It's at the intelligentbuildingresourcecenter.com. To that end, you would like, I'm going to throw in here a little quick thing. If you would like to email any one of the panelists and you don't have their contact information, inquiries at intelligentbuildingresourcecenter.com, then we'll get you in contact with any one of the panelists. You can ask them any questions you like. They are very generous people with their time, and they work hard. And I'll tell you what, this was really worth the time. I feel like I learn a lot every time I talk with every one of these panelists. So if you get a chance while we're wrapping up, shoot a real big thank you to all 6 of our panelists for being willing to contribute their time and their expertise. This is, like I said, this is extremely valuable information that you're getting, and they're doing a great job sharing it. You can also go ahead and please don't forget to register for the future sessions. Seating is limited. We'll continue to be telling people about this, so go ahead and get your spot secured up front. So, and I am going to thank all of you for coming today. And you'll get a post-session questionnaire. You're welcome to fill that out and also ask to be contacted by any one of the panelists today. And we will see you all next week. So thank you again, panelists. Thank you again, attendees. This has been a fantastic 1 hour, and I think well worth it. So thank you very much, y'all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.